The cholera outbreak that started in May in South Africa has put issues of access to safe drinking water and proper sanitation to the fore. But to this date, the source of the outbreak, which claimed at least 43 lives in Gauteng, Free State and Limpopo, remains unknown. However, an independent investigation into the source of the outbreak did make a worrying discovery, finding high levels of Coli in nearby rivers. Dr. Aslam Dasoo is convener of the Progressive Health Forum, and he joins me now for further discussion on this issue. Dr. Dasoo, appreciate your time this evening. Now, we would ask, where did this come from? But the government or the authorities, many months on, have no idea. What is the current state of the cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal and certainly across the country?
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. As far as we can tell, the outbreak in Hammanskraal has subsided. There are no new cases reported. I think the last active case was reported a couple of days ago from a returning national who went to Pakistan and came back suffering from cholera, but he was treated. So it's difficult to say what the situation is with respect to cholera. Cholera will always exist when the conditions for it exist. So the report that you reference, the fact that it finds high degrees of E. coli in a nearby river means that wastewater is being discharged into that river untreated. And you can expect that it's not only E. coli, but there'll be other pathogens, and perhaps even including cholera in that. It's very worrying because it wasn't only found in Hammanskraal, but practically I think in about 4 or 5 other provinces at the height of the outbreak.
So, Dr. Dasoo, you talk about the presence of E. coli and that this generally is what leads to the outbreaks or potential outbreaks of cholera. Those are the conditions for it. And there's E. coli almost across many parts of the country. And the authorities are saying that they're unaware of the source of this initial outbreak of cholera. Are they keeping something from the public?
Okay, so we have to separate these things. So E. coli is a intestinal bug, so and it can cause enteric diseases if in areas of poor sanitation. So it's a marker. That's what E. coli is, of sewage being emptied into, say, rivers or other pools of water. And if you test for that, you'll find E. coli. In Durban, KZN, for example, after the floods, when the wastewater systems were badly damaged, the beaches were all filled with E. coli. So that's a marker. Cholera is an ancient pathogen. It occurs naturally in brackish water. You'll find it in some saltwater pools. But it's not really an issue if you have a steady supply of piped potable water and proper wastewater management. Now, in most urban areas of South Africa and peri-urban areas, even since 1994, there were properly functional wastewater management, sewage management systems in place. Now, one would expect that the capital city, where, and near Hammanskraal, would have had exactly the same, and in fact it was. But 15 years ago, the wastewater plant broke down at Rooiwal. And it beggars belief that 15 years later, it still hasn't been fixed. And if you're going to have that kind of condition persisting, it's almost inevitable, given that cholera is endemic in several regions around South Africa, and there's a lot of travel, it's inevitable that cholera will find purchase in that sort of environment. And that's why a lot of people got sick and over 40 people died, because it's a very dangerous pathogen. And it's all about wastewater management and having clean, potable water to drink. If that breaks down, the most elementary function of a municipality for 15 years was not attended to, then you have to ask, what are they doing in that city council? It boggles the mind.
Well, I suppose it also then speaks to possible ineptitude, if you will, because these are issues that certainly should have been planned for. And what we also pick up is that from the Water Research Commission's investigation, they identified issues with the functionality of different water and wastewater treatment plants. So how do these operational efficiencies contribute to the spread of the outbreak, firstly? And secondly, just how seriously is this issue being taken by the authorities?
Well, it's a pity that it took such a loss of life, such a great tragedy, for the authorities to say, oh, sorry, our wastewater treatment is not working in Pretoria. Oh, it broke down 15 years ago. There have been successive governments in that municipality. And this, why I'm focusing on this, because it's also evident in many other municipalities, where a basic function is in the remit and the authority of that local government, but they don't have either the people or they don't care about the maintenance of something like that. These systems are kind of, you don't have to do much. You have to just manage them, make sure there's good upkeep, and then upgrade as and when necessary. They kind of run themselves. But they couldn't even do that. So the situation is by no means clear. All I can say is that until the wastewater plant in Pretoria, in Rooiwal, is fixed and that proper wastewater management is in place, the people of Hammanskraal continue to face the risk. So there's temporary measures. I think they're using the Magali's water system to pipe through to Hammanskraal because their own systems don't work. Costs a lot of money, and I don't know how long it's going to take them to fix this problem. But this is replicated in municipalities across the country. And if you just take Mfuleni, south of Johannesburg, which is in charge of the second most important waterway in all of Africa, the Vaal water system, it's been broken down for years, and you know about this. And contaminated water is flowing into the Vaal. Now, it's not likely to arise in the piped water that's coming out of your taps, because that comes directly from reservoirs where there is sterilizing procedures in place. So you won't find it in your tap water. But every other source of water, and in rural areas, rivers are important places. People use them not only for recreation, but for other purposes. It's going to occur. And it's an ancient scourge that development puts aside. And when you don't have development, or if you have a natural calamity like an earthquake or flooding, that's the only time it likely emerges. We have been holding our breath about what might happen in Durban. It's amazing that it hasn't flared up there, but it's occurred in Mpumalanga. It's occurred in the Free State, all during this period. And we know that in Zimbabwe, it's endemic now. In Mozambique, it's endemic. There's a lot of movement of people across. So it's almost an inevitable thing. What you have to ask is why, after so long, and after well-resourced municipalities, are given budgets and so on, that they can't do an elementary thing, just like looking after the water system of a municipality. Who are these people? Why are they there? Who puts them there? And if we don't interrogate that, we are going to find this occurring over and over again. And you see it in municipalities across the country where people are now forced to buy bottled water. It's expensive. Most people can't afford it. So they'll go to the river and maybe try and get water from there. And that water is already collecting sewage discharge. So, the circle is vicious.
It certainly is. Dr. Aslam Dasoo, convener of the Progressive Health Forum. Appreciate your time this evening.